whilst I was still waiting for May to get her act together. It was getting closer to my last day. It was on a Friday that the phone rang at the place where I was working. The boss told me it was May on the phone, and that she wanted to talk to me. "Oh hi Chris, funny coincidence you being here. I was just phoning up to see when the next conversation class is, but your boss said that you were here, so I just thought I'd say hello. I didn't expect you to be here." "You're right, I believe you, May," I thought to myself. So we got talking again, and she eventually got around to a feeble kind of masked apology. "Well, I would have apologized if you'd apologized for this and that and blah blah." And we arranged to meet up the next night, which was my last night in Sapporo. That night, I decided to go partying and thought that going down to Bar Isn't It for one last booze up would be a nice goodbye to my Japanese party days. When I got down there, it was around 12:30, so it was already pretty lively. I started drinking, and before I knew it, some Japanese guys had started arguing with each other, just like samurais. I love watching Japanese guys scrap with each other. I got my usual ringside seat and stood next to this Japanese guy, who was also watching what was taking place. Unusually for a Japanese guy. This one was built like a tank. I had never seen anything like it, with an attitude to match. Well, the fight never happened, and the guy sat down on the chair behind me, chatting with the guys who were obviously his crew, buzzing around him like flies to shit. I went to walk away, but then realized my foot was trapped. The guy had accidentally placed the chair on it or something. Either way, I was stuck, and I had to try to get the guy off my foot. But at that moment, for some reason, I couldn't for the life of me remember how to say, "Excuse me, your chair is on my foot," in Japanese. Damn. So anyway, I started tapping the guy on the shoulder. And he's like, "What?" in no friendly manner. In fact, it looked like the fight had spurred him on, or something. And I'm just like some moron, waving my hands around and pointing at my feet, with an anxious look on my face. The guy was just or something, or didn't realize what the hell I was going on about. And I'm thinking by now, Jesus, this guy is gonna start laying into me, if I don't stop freaking him out. All his buddies were giving me evil glares, and were starting to circle around me. After a couple more attempts of me trying to tell him what was going on, I think the guy must have thought I was trying to take the piss out of him, and wanted a fight. I could tell he was gonna get up any second and start it off, so I was getting ready to get the first hit in. Although I definitely was gonna get the cack knocked out of me the second I landed it. Then the Japanese came to me in a flash.
あなたは俺の足を踏んでる。足を踏んでいる。
Luckily for me, the dude grinned in realization, and even made a kind of fake phew gesture. It turned out that he was just as worried as I was, and probably thought I was some crazy gaijin, about to pull a knife out on him or something. We started chatting about weights and birds and stuff. After that, the night was uneventful, although I did meet a girl. I waved goodbye to my newfound buddy and left Bar Isn't It for the last time, leaving behind what were my Playboy days in Japan. The next day was my final day in Japan. I felt dead. I woke up with the girl I was with and walked her home. Then I spent most of the rest of the day playing video games and messing around, but the knowledge that I was going to leave the place I loved hung over me, like the Grim Reaper. I saw my pal Lenny from Texas. Before I'd met him, I thought all guys from Texas were called Job, and referred to Japan as that place where them dang Chinese that daddy killed are. But this guy was serious and brainy, who not only could read and write Japanese, but also Chinese. Plus, he had a good sense of humor. The first time I met him at work, he told me where he was from, and I cracked a joke without thinking, one of my worst traits. So, don't be seeing much of the clan in these here parts. Slapping myself for realizing what a twat thing that was to say. Luckily, he saw the funny side. And from that day on, we had a fun relationship based on mocking each other's countries. I have to say, he did a good tough accent, and anytime I got pissed at something, he'd be like, There, tally-ho old chap, I'll fetch the tea and scones and everything will be spiffy." What was even funnier were the moments I shared with my German pal, Schorsch, as we'd go mad on long bike rides. I'd be overtaking him on my bike, screaming, "Ach, Sie English Schweinhund." Look as he takes the skillful lead over the German, "Oh ho 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 ho," mocking his accent, and the German comrade laugh. But then he'd catch up, going, "This is a joke, Yo, minor accent. Was is this? I don't speak like this, yo. Well, they didn't win the war, but we'll win this bicycle race. Then he'd pedal like a man obsessed into the horizon. All good, harmless fun. So anyway, back to reality. The Texan guy comes up to me with his baseball cap on and says, "Dude, I finally did it, just like you." What? I Japanicized my hair, man. He took off his cap. And it was true. Replacing the long black ponytail was a perfectly curtained blonde mop, shoulder length, straight as an arrow, and ruffled at the edges. Exactly like the young Japanese guys had it. And just like I had it. Haha, if you can't beat em, join em. We sat on the steps near the Eiffel Tower in Odori Park, watching the birds go by, with the sun in our faces. We both sat in silence for a minute, and then Lenny says, "Going tomorrow, eh?" "Yeah, shit, don't talk about it. Wouldn't want it to be me. Really sucks, mi hombre." I put my head in my hands. Then I turned to him. "Oh, hey man, anyway, do you wanna meet this Chinese girl I know? You can speak Chinese, right?" I thought of introducing the two, since Lenny didn't have a lot of friends in Sapporo, and he always told me how he'd want to practice his Chinese, but couldn't in Japan. So I phoned up May, and she said she'd turn up later at the park. The rest of the day was spent hanging out with the other gaijin. It was such a bright day, a really lousy time to leave the country I'd grown to love. For some reason, I think it was because it was university holidays, a lot of gaijin had gathered, sitting on the grass that evening. It almost seemed to me like it was some kind of weird coincidence that my last day would be when I met the most foreigners in one place. Suddenly, my main amigo Osaka turns up on his bike. Now, Osaka's the most famous Mexican in Sapporo, so I don't need to cover up his name, because everyone knows him anyhow, and would only guess who I was talking about if they read this page. Besides, he and I had been on TV before in Sapporo, on some kind of documentary about his life, and being a gaijin in Japan. It was hilarious, because I remember the doc was about him trying to find a good job in Sapporo, and they'd had him dressed up like a Mexican gunfighter, going into shops and stuff with his bad Japanese. At the end, the Japanese host was like, "Well Osaka, good luck and I hope you find a job soon." And then me and all the rest of the gaijin were supposed to say good luck, or something nice to him. But we all took it in turns to call him a bum, or unemployed loser, or something equally derogatory, which was oblivious to the producers, who could barely speak a word of English. And all on national TV. Osaka found it as funny as we did. So Osaka's the eternal philosopher, always full of good stuff, and a funny guy to boot, quick talking, like Cheech from Cheech and Chong. So he comes along, and we start chatting till the sun goes down. Then he sees some guys, and tells me they're his friends, and that we should go and sit with them. So we do. And it turns out to be a bunch of Arabic-speaking guys from all over Africa, Tunisia, Morocco. Very clever guys who were studying at a nearby university. We started drinking together after introductions. Osaka was friends with the Moroccan, and they were laughing over the Moroccan guy's resemblance to every other Moroccan Osaka had met before. The Moroccan guy was very good-humored and was smiling at everything. Osaka was more than a little drunk and flailing his arms around like a true Latino. "Hey, so you're from Morocco, man? It's amazing. You Moroccan guys, you all look the same, see? Same faces, see? It's amazing. I saw some guy in the airport Moroccan. I swear, it's your twin brother, man." Everyone laughed at that. It was some funny stuff, you had to see it. I also met a seriously unattractive guy from Afghanistan. Not that I've met many guys from there, but the way he talked really stuck in my mind. He was very educated, and had common sense too, which is rare for many educated men. I'm in Oxford now, and trust me, a lot of these Oxfordites are as dim as they come. This guy was a good speaker. The kind of guy that could make a conversation about nuclear atom structure seem fascinating to listen to. I never met a more charming guy. Real cool guy. I realized that guys can still be attractive to girls, and yet be as ugly as shit. Which probably explains why women like Michael Winner. Anyway, Osaka was busy laughing at a story that was being told about how one of these guys could never sleep because his flatmate was always with a Japanese girl next door. Every time this guy was asked what he was doing the night before, he replied, "Studying." as he was too shy to admit what he was really up to. So Oscar was killing himself with laughter, and the Arabs were chuckling like jackals, as the main guy was saying to him how the guy next door must have been a genius, as he was in his room studying for most of the day. Man, you study in the morning, in the evening, eh? You make a lot of noise when you're studying, man. Then one Afghan starts chatting to me. So where are you from, my friend? Britain. Oh, England. Lovely country. You think so? I'm going back tomorrow. This is my last night. Ah well, it's quite a good place, my friend. You'll have fun. Very pretty girls in England. The guy mentioned casually, as though it wasn't my favorite subject in the world. Scary, man. Scary is a better word. At this point, Oscar bumps in, almost choking on his drink. Hey, but my friend Chris, man, he likes the Japanese girls better. He's the 007 charming guy, straight from England itself, you know. But only Orientals, isn't it, man? Ah, you know what I like about the English girls, man? You know what? It's that in England, they've got those girls with the big beautiful butts. It's like a butt paradise, man. And sometimes the English girls' faces can be really heavenly too, but the butt is like two plum cherries. We start arguing jokingly about the comparisons between Asian and Western women, when all of a sudden May walks by and says hi. Lenny wasn't around, so I had to look after her. Oscar starts whispering in my ear. Well, you know, my friend, if I had a girl like that, I wouldn't want to go back to England either. So I walk off with May, and I say goodbye to all my good friends and all the wonderful guys that gave me so many adventures and so much good advice, and walked into Susukino with May, arm in arm. However, she didn't seem in such a good mood for some reason. But tonight was my last night, and, depressed enough as I wasn't gonna let her screw up my last night. She may be the face I wouldn't forget, but I wasn't feeling so romantic towards her that night. And god damn it, she was pissing me off again with her lack of sweet talk to cheer me up on my last day. So I let her have it. May, you're a nice girl. But let me tell you something. My last piece of advice as we go our separate ways. You're beautiful, but you're not considerate of people's feelings, and I reckon when people meet you for the first time, you come across as a complete bitch. She was taken aback, naturally. What do you mean by that? I mean, you're cruel, you know. Beauty and the Beast in one. How can any guy love you when you just expect men to give you everything? You don't give me anything. I give you lots of presents, actually. I mean, nothing emotional. You know, you just want me to tell you how beautiful you are and stuff. And sometimes I wonder if you're just with me, because you like the way I look and because I'm popular with other girls. You're not a very deep person, even though you want people to think you are. I bit my lip as I knew I'd gone too far that time. That's not true. She couldn't think of anything. Christian, I can't believe you can say these cruel things on our last night. She kind of stormed ahead, and I watched her, but didn't catch up with her. In fact, the more I watched her walk off, the more I thought, just let her go, who gives a shit? But she stayed close, and eventually, we got to a turning corner towards the area where she lived. I sat down at a shop entrance, and she came and sat down next to me. I said sorrowfully, "Look, May, I'm sorry about that, okay? I'm just sad, you know, it's my last day and all." All I wished for in the world at that moment was just for her to forgive me, to put her head on my shoulder, let me hold her as she stroked my hair, and reassure me that we'd see each other again, that everything would be okay, that everything in life would be okay, and that we had all the time in the world. Could have been so easy, but she was pure bitchy stubbornness. So, walk me home then, I need to be back soon, it's cold. Bollocks. I said I had to go sit down and walked off towards the park at full speed. I made sure she didn't follow me. And that was that goodbye to May. And goodbye to Japan. The next day, I boarded the plane back to England. I went with my old bird's father, Oto-san, to the airport. I have to admit, we were both so choked up about not seeing each other again for such a long time, that we hardly said a word to each other, regretfully. As I was about to cross the barrier, we shook hands, and I stood holding his hand for longer than I should have, holding up the queue. I looked into his eyes, which reflected all the pain I felt inside myself, and said, in a broken voice that I had to strain to control, how grateful I was for everything he'd done for me, and that I'd never forget him. It was possibly the most emotional moment of my life. Then I left. I had the window seat, and as the plane took off, I watched Japan get smaller and smaller through the window. All kinds of thoughts ran through my mind, snaps of all the great things that had happened to me in that country, the places, a family I felt a part of, the beautiful girls, the happy smiles on my students' faces. Flashes in my mind of moments of such joy, with all the incredibly passionate foreigners I'd met, people I'd been searching for all my life. Oto-san. I watched it all slip away. I felt so desperately choked I could hardly breathe. It was like being taken back to a prison cell I had just escaped from, with all the horrible prospects of years more in England waiting for me. I heard a quiet voice in my head saying pitifully, "Don't take me away from there. That's my home. That's my Japan." I broke down like a little kid who'd lost his best friend in the whole wide world. Niagara Falls, man, bloody Niagara Falls. It can't end like this. So that was that, back to England. After catching the second connecting flight to Heathrow from Amsterdam, I groaned as I saw a bunch of lads on their way back from a trip to Amsterdam. They were talking about football, work, the telly, all the crap I'd really thought I'd escaped from. Grim reality hit me in the face like a 30-pound hammer. I was going home. It was nice to see the few members of my family again, but frankly, I felt sick to my stomach to be back. I couldn't settle for weeks. Even now, I don't feel quite right in England, and I keep telling myself, dude, you're not here for good. You're like a foreign student or something, just waiting to go back home. That does the trick, but there isn't a night that goes by when I don't imagine being back on my futon. On the first night I arrived in Japan, looking out the window and seeing everything Japanese, thinking, my God, I made it to Japan. I sometimes wonder if it wasn't all just a fantastic figment of my imagination, but I'll go back, one day. So, university had started, and I'd settled into Portsmouth by then. It wasn't so bad, especially since I'd met a few Japanese people in Portsmouth and made a really good friend called Masashi, though he called himself Rick. Yeah, despite the lack of a surfboard and blonde hair, haha, well, it stuck, and everyone else called him that, so I did too. 3 months down the line, I started thinking more and more about May. It's like that when you miss someone you've been close to, you only think of the good things. During my time in Japan, even though I'd been with a lot of other babes, the original one was still playing on my mind, right up until I got back to England. But by that time, I'd finally gotten over her. Still, I always thought about May, and how it shouldn't have ended the way it did. I forgot the bitchiness, the vanity, and just remembered her cute laugh, and the funny conversations we had together. I just knew I had to find her. Things had come to a boil,